Can Coach Neil Brown redeem himself after the loss to the Oklahoma Sooners? And they're playing a team who's coming off their very first conference win and who's riding high right now in the Cincinnati Bearcats. We're going to preview this game, and I'm bringing on a very special guest to do just that right after this word from my sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Belly yourself up to the bar and make yourself comfortable. Grab a chair, whatever you want, and dig in because we are getting ready to preview West Virginia, Cincinnati coming up this Saturday, November 18th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN Plus, part of the Big 12 Now Network. And to preview this game, I am going to bring on a special guest, Mr. Keegan Nickoson from the Bearcat Journal. And Keegan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing well, man. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join me.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
If you don't mind, real quick, before we dig in, let my folks know where to find you and your work.
Yeah, find me on Twitter at knickoson42 as it is on the screen. And then everything on Bearcat Journal, 247 Sports. Basically have something up there every day, different on the kind of quality of it, if it's long form or if it's short form commitment, recruitment stuff. But I'm consistently posting there every day. Awesome.
Thank you for that. And for those of you who may be listening in audio only, it's KNICKOSON 42 on X. And it's Keegan Nickoson, Nickoson. So check him out. Check out his work. He's doing good stuff over there at BearcatJournal.com. All right, Keegan, before we get into the on-the-field stuff and the matchups and whatnot, I want to get your thoughts. And we kind of talked about this a little bit off camera, but I want you to tell the audience a little bit first of all, how exciting is it to be in the Big 12? And second of all, the football team is right now 1-6 in the league, I believe, 3-7 overall. I'm sure that you guys expected to do better than that in year one. So can you just kind of explain, A, the excitement of being in the Big 12 and B, the expectations and has the team fallen short of that?
Yeah, I think just being in the Big 12 it's been a huge blessing as a member of the media. But for the fan base, it's something that they've been waiting for so long. I think they tried to get in the Big 12 the first go around. I think it was 2015, 2016, maybe. And they just didn't get in. I don't think the Big 12 valued them that much, but yet they get in on this go around. And every weekend it's a big game. When you're in the AAC, they played teams like Indiana and they played Notre Dame and they played some other Power 5 schools. And those games were always a huge event. And now they're kind of learning that week in and week out, it might not be as sustainable than an AAC schedule and then having those games sprinkled in. But it's been awesome. And I think, like you said, you didn't expect to go 3-7 in this season, but I think you expected to be right around bowl eligibility at this point in the season, which they're not. I guess they can technically still make it at 5-7 with the APR, but yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on Satterfield, and especially taking over for a coach that was beloved by this fan base and that took it from the depths and took it all the way to a college football playoff. So it's going to be a very big offseason for him. And then year two is going to be very telling because a lot of people kind of have open dialogues and open opinions about Satterfield. It's not good. We don't love what we're seeing, but it's natural to give a coach 2 to 3 years at least, let him get some recruits in and let him kind of instill his culture. But if year two is the same as year one, there's a lot of those opinions are going to be closed and they're not going to be reopened unless you go 9-3, 10-2 in year three and kind of get a New Year's Six bowl or something of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah. It's we live in a time now where college coaches don't get 5-6 years to build their programs anymore. Definitely. I mean, we, as you and I were talking off air, Neil Brown's in year 5 at West Virginia and he's not he's got to earn himself some trust from the fan base right now, which he's trying to do. But so we get it. We definitely get it. Speaking of Satterfield, or speaking of the Big 12, a lot of your Cincinnati listeners, readers may not like me too much, the ones who know about me, because I did pick Cincinnati to finish dead last in the league.
Yeah.
But it's not because I didn't think they were a quality program. I mean, we came from the Big East to the Big East was a BCS conference.
Yeah, very much.
But it wasn't the Big 12. I mean, you guys were in the Big East with us. So I'm sure you understand that, but it wasn't the Big 12 by any means. So we've seen how hard it is to go to the Big 12. You got to recruit a different type of player. You have to have more depth. It's just a tougher league. And so I knew that there would be an adjustment period for the 4 new schools, and I felt like Cincinnati would have the hardest time because of you're breaking in a new coach. No offense to Satterfield, but he's not Luke Fickell. I'm not saying he can't be successful, but I mean, Luke Fickell was one of the hottest names in the country. And obviously when he left, you had a lot of guys leave through the portal, as you know. So I knew it would be a tough adjustment for Cincinnati to come in year one and do well. And I also figured Houston and UCF and BYU would struggle. I didn't think they would struggle quite as much as they have, especially UCF and BYU.
Yeah.
But I knew it would be a struggle because it's just, like you said, it's a different animal playing a Power 5 schedule week in, week out. So yeah, I did expect this to kind of happen, to be honest with you. Not trying to pat myself on the back, but that is one of the predictions I got right. There was a few I did not get right either. So
yeah, and you brought up the recruiting, and someone asked me, I think it was in a preview for the Houston game, and it was, what's the biggest adjustment they've had to make? And it's like there's a very tangible difference in size and speed. It's not extremely noticeable, but you can notice it in some plays. And you have to realize you're coming into a conference, and 10 of the 14 teams have been recruiting consistently bigger, faster, and stronger than you have for a couple decades. So you have to really, really catch up with that. And it might take 2 to 3 years to get that bigger, faster, stronger skill into your roster to be able to compete with those schools. So year one, you can kind of tell a difference. There's still a lot of AAC talent on this team that are really realizing what it's like to play a Big 12 schedule week in and week out. And there's also some Power 5 talent that was on that AAC roster, which is why this team was able to beat Notre Dame and Indiana and make a college football playoff. Deshaun Pace, Juwan Briggs, and Dontay Corleone are 3 guys on the defensive side of the ball that have made a huge difference and who were here years before. So it's going to be an adjustment. And the thing is this season could not have come at a worse time because Cincinnati fans were so used to winning week in and week out. It was almost a guarantee every time they took the field. They were going to win and win convincingly. And now you're in a case where you're one of the bottom teams in the conference, and the hope for a better future for some fans is kind of bleak, knowing that you have a coach who, in all honesty, at Louisville wasn't a huge difference maker. John Cunningham decided to hire him because he valued the experience of a Power 5 coach, leading them into the Big 12 conference. And now it's not looking great right now. But as I said before, and the things that fans don't really want to do, because a lot of them want him gone now, you have to give him the time to be able to build his roster and build the kind of team that he wants, because it's a completely different scheme than what Luke Fickell had.
Right. Great point. The scheme's another thing you have to take into consideration. And, Satterfield has coached in a Power 5 conference before, so I think he knows what kind of players it takes to win at that level. So hopefully within 2 or 3 years, he'll have Cincinnati, doing a lot better and being more competitive in the league. And I think he will. Yeah. Do I think, do I think he's going to be as good a coach as Luke Fickell? Probably not. But I do think he'll win some, I do think he'll be competitive.
Anyone doing what Luke Fickell did here it's almost impossible.
It's a very high bar, right? Very high bar.
The highest bar is set possible.
Yeah. So, it's not, I'm not taking shots at Satterfield by any stretch. It's just Satterfield's Fickell's one of the best coaches in the country, in my opinion. Yeah. Now let's dig into the players. You mentioned Dontay Corleone, and that's where I want to start. To me, the key matchup in this entire football game is Dontay Corleone at nose tackle for Cincinnati versus Zach Frazier at center for West Virginia, who's also who's an All-American as well.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that matchup? I can't wait to watch that.
I'm excited to see it. I think there's been a lot of suspect offensive lines this year, but even so, Cincinnati hasn't gotten a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So I think Dontay's a great dude, and I've enjoyed covering him. He's very friendly with the media. He's just a really, really good dude. So I would love to see his NFL prospects rise after this game if he can have a good game against Frazier. But the Cincinnati defensive front has really struggled to get pressure on the quarterback, as I just mentioned. And it's kind of due to a lack of a speed and technical edge rusher. Daniel Greshik is a converted tight end from Utah State, or it might have been Nevada, Utah State or Nevada, who is in his grad year here at Cincinnati. Kind of an undersized guy when you think of an edge rusher. And he's had a good season, but it's just – you're just missing that piece of a speed guy who can also overpower tackles. So not being able to get pressure on the quarterback kind of allows offensive lines to double Dontay Corleone. And he said in the presser yesterday, he said, I lick my chops when I have a one-on-one. Yeah. So, and he hasn't gotten that a lot. So it would be really interesting to see if he can get a one-on-one with Frazier and just see that heavyweight bout. He's a super, super strong and physical guy. He actually had to lose a bunch of weight when he got on campus because he was massive coming out of Colerain High School in Cincinnati. And then the strength coach with Fickle got with him, got him to lose some pounds, gained some speed and athleticism, and he had a great sophomore season last year, and it's kind of built into another season where he's kind of building on that success.
Yeah. I watched him play in the Pitt game, and he was very impressive. And
yeah.
And I look back, and I did actually go back and watch his press conference from this week. Actually, I guess it would have been yesterday when he spoke to the media about this game, and I was impressed with him as well. You can tell he's a leader on that team.
Yeah,
just by the way he talks. They were asking about some of the other players, and he was like, "Yeah, he's got to do better than." Or it's like you can tell that he holds some of the other guys accountable.
Yeah,
which I thought was cool because you need that on a team,
Absolutely.
And I can tell he's one of those guys, and you can tell that the team, even though they're not, at least I got a sense that even though they're not succeeding at the level they want right now, that they're still a pretty close-knit group. Would you say that's accurate?
Most of them, yes. There was a last week's press conference after the UCF game, right after the game. Satterfield said he talked about how bad the discipline was and how it's embarrassing, and that's not what Cincinnati football is about. And then he said, we're going to have a team meeting Sunday, and I just told him we're going to work with whoever shows up at that meeting. So you kind of get this sense of, is there people who aren't completely bought in?
Yeah.
And then you go to the Tuesday press conference, and he goes, well, everyone showed up, so that was good. And then he said, you have 85 to 90% of the guys are doing 100% of everything they need to do for this team to have success and to commit to this program. And then you have some other guys who aren't. And I asked Corey Kiner and D'Artagnan Tinsley about that, and they said, yeah, sometimes you have some oddballs on some teams, and it's kind of a consistent thing where you're going to have guys that aren't fully bought in. So like you said, the majority of them, they're close-knit, and a lot of them have talked about sending off the seniors in the right way, and I think that's something that kind of led to the increased production against Houston and led to the win. And it would be really interesting to see if that carries over, because if you were in the mindset of getting to a bowl game and now that's not a reality, you have to shift your motivation in order to end the season on a high note. And if your motivation can be, we have to send these seniors off because we've seen how much they've done for the program, how much they've done for this team this season, then that can be the thing that motivates you to win these last two games, build momentum towards the offseason, and really save the coaching staff's butt and shift the narrative going into next season for the fan base.
Right. Yeah, and very well said. I think anytime you lose games, you're going to have it's hard on a locker room. It makes any small fractures in a locker room get bigger. I think when you're not having a successful season, winning cures everything. That's what they say, right? And that's the truth. West Virginia's went through it. We've had years where guys weren't bought in, and most of the time, at least a lot of the times, those are the all seasons when you see a lot of guys leave in the portal. And what a lot of fans don't, I think they realize that they just don't recognize it, is a lot of times when guys hit the portal, it's not always the player's decision. Sometimes the coach says, "Hey, look, you know, this is not working. Maybe you need to go somewhere else." That's not always the case. Obviously, you know, guys do leave on their own, but so it'll be interesting to see how many guys on Cincinnati's roster stick around, you know, during this offseason. But
I think there will be a decent amount of turnover.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's natural with some guys staying with a coach who they weren't really that familiar with, and they might have stayed because they love the program. And if they're just honest, it doesn't have to be a personal thing, but they can just say, I have this free transfer and I have to use it if I don't think I'm in the right situation.
Yeah. Staying on the defensive side of the ball for Cincinnati, you mentioned, and I hope I get his first name right, is Deshaun Pace?
It's pronounced, which I didn't know this until the start of the season. It's actually pronounced Deshaun Pace.
Deshaun Pace, okay.
Yeah.
Deshaun Pace, really good defensive back for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about his game, and then if you don't mind, and I'll talk about our receivers and who he might be matched up against.
Well, it's funny you talk about receivers because he doesn't excel in pass coverage to the level that he did his redshirt freshman season. Mm-hmm. He's moved into this star role, so it's a hybrid DB and linebacker role.
Gotcha.
He kind of just roams around in between the safeties and the linebackers. He's been probably the best defender in their rushing defense all season. He racks up tackles with reckless abandon. He probably is the second hardest hitter on the defense behind safety Brian Threats. And he's a real difference maker. He's lanky, he's tall, and he's super strong. But the pass defense part of it, I think it definitely has progressed as the seasons went on. But there were some low spots for him in the first half of the season. But he's going to be big in the rushing game. I think that's really been the difference maker in Cincinnati's ability to stop the rush, is having that guy that is kind of committed to that. And then he also has the ability to drop back in coverage if he has to. And then obviously you have massive human beings like Jawan Briggs and Dontay Corleone, as we've talked about, kind of filling up the gaps up front. But he's a really special player. And I'm interested to see how NFL teams look at him, because he's kind of too big and not extremely fast to be a defensive back, but he shows the athleticism. So what they will decide is, you need to put on 35 pounds to be a linebacker, or you need to lose some weight and you can fully commit to DB, or they can try to wrap a role around him as a star, as kind of a Jamal Adams type.
Gotcha. That's kind of like we have a position called the spear position. At West Virginia, I think it's a similar deal, kind of a hybrid linebacker.
It's probably the same thing. I think they just give different names. I think under Fickle, he was a joker. Now he's a star. I've seen dog positions, as you said, spear. It's probably all the same thing. They just like to get creative and make their own name for it.
Yeah, but you're right. They those spears are really big in really everything. They do it all. Pass coverage, a rush. They rush a lot. At least Marcus Floyd, our spear, he rushes the passer quite a bit. When they dial up different blitzes. So and of course they're big on stopping the run as well. You mentioned Cincinnati's rush defense. How good is that rush defense? Because we know West Virginia loves to run the football. So how are you guys on the rush defense piece?
They've been good all season, and I think going into Oklahoma State, that's what made you think the Bearcats had a chance in that game. And in the first half, they really stopped Ollie Gordon. I think he only had 65 yards. And I don't know what happened, but I think he had 220-some yards in the second half and just ran all over him. So it's kind of just, other than that, it's been a pretty good season, and it's kind of natural when you have Jawan Briggs and Dontay Corleone who can fill up the gaps. You have Jack Dingle, who is legitimately one of the fastest players on the team at linebacker. Dorian Jones provides a veteran presence. And then, as I said, Deshaun Pace, always in the backfield and blitzing, as you said, with the spear position. He's made a huge difference. So it's really – Brian Brown is a very good defensive coordinator, and he was lauded as one of the best assistant coaches in all of college football this year. So it hasn't been a surprise that they've had a good rushing defense. And I think going forward, especially in the Big 12 conference, when you want to spread the ball around and throw it as much as you can, at least what a lot of the teams want to do. I would expect that to be a staple for Cincinnati, that you're not going to come in and run the ball all over us. They call it the nasty natty attitude that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that Cincinnati has to have, and it's something that they've had most of the season.
Yeah, to me, that's going to be another key here, because when I'm looking at the stats right now, actually, West Virginia is third in the conference in rush offense, averaging 214, right at 214 yards a game. But Cincinnati's rush defense is only giving up 138 yards a game.
Yeah.
Fifth in the conference. So it'll be interesting to see who wins that battle.
Yeah.
Who would you say at the linebacker spot would be the key guy there in doing that?
Jack Dingle. He's really a physical specimen. Some people call him an Adonis. That's kind of a running joke that we have in the media here at Cincinnati. But he's probably 6'3", 6'4". He could probably clock at like a 4'6", 4'7", 40-yard dash.
Wow.
He's still super raw. So when you're watching him, you'll kind of see him running all over the field with his hair on fire, not completely contained. I think he's a true sophomore, actually. So he has shown the ability to be a difference maker. And I know that Brian Brown is really going to build his defense around him in the coming years. And I think he's among the leader in tackles with Deshaun Pace on the team. And he would be the one to look at. And then Dorian Jones is kind of that guy right next to him at linebacker, who is where he needs to be basically every play. And no one's really going to get past him, but he's not going to be rushing the quarterback consistently like Jack Dingle might be and getting those sacks.
Gotcha. Yeah, with West Virginia's rushing attack, I mean, we lead the nation right now in consecutive games over 140 yards, and it goes all the way back into last year. I mean, we even had 176 yards rushing against Oklahoma. We didn't do much else right. But but most games we're hitting 200 yards, plus. So even at 176 was a little less than what they had been doing. I mean, we ran for almost 400 against BYU a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So to me, if Cincinnati's defense is able to hold West Virginia to 150 yards or less rushing, I think they have, maybe even less than 200. I think they have a really good chance to win, because West Virginia's passing offense, we have the worst passing offense in the league. And when you look at Cincinnati's pass defense, it's right around the middle of the pack. So it's pretty decent. It's not, not setting the world on fire, but it's performing better than our passing offense. So do you guys have we've talked about Deshaun Pace already. Who else in that secondary, mainly at the corner spot, is your best player in pass coverage?
Well, it's interesting you say they're around middle of the pack. And I'm not exactly sure what statistics they're looking at. It could just be yards per game in terms of passing.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But the secondary has consistently been the worst part of this entire team this season. They lost Sammy Anderson in week 1. He had a concussion in the Fenway Bowl, the last game of the year, against Louisville, funnily enough. Knocked him out of the game. I think he was knocked unconscious for a few seconds, and then he goes through the whole offseason, kind of recovers. First game against EKU, same thing. So the training staff says, okay, well, the last 2 times you've played a competitive game, you've been knocked unconscious with a concussion, so you're probably going to be done. And he was ruled out for the whole season, I think, in week 6 or 7. That's when they decided to roll him out. So I expected him to have a good year. I did not expect him to be the best DB on the field with Jordan Young coming in from Florida. But that is showing that was the truth. And Sammy Anderson is a talented player, and they're seeing how much that loss has hurt them. So Jordan Young has had some struggles. I think he was very unproven at Florida. I think he mainly just got on in special teams. But he had a tough season up until this last week, and they actually went into Houston starting a true freshman and a redshirt freshman at corner.
Yep.
And then Jordan Young comes in and has the best game of his life, probably. Huge tackles to stop on 4th down. Had a PBU that led to an interception. So I asked Satterfield about it. I was like, you have this guy who transferred him from Florida who is starting every week, and you decide to start a true freshman Kalen Carroll, and a redshirt freshman in Raekwon Atkins. Or no, redshirt, Kalen, true freshman Raekwon Atkins. And he said, yeah, I mean, we preach discipline here. And he was playing undisciplined football early in the week at practice. So we told him, we said, we're going to go with Raekwon, and we'll see if it sends a message. And the message was sent, and he had a great game. And I would fully expect him to be starting with Kalen Carroll. But that's the thing. They had Justin Harris, who's a 6th-year guy, maybe a 5th-year guy, starting at corner in replace of Sammy Anderson. And he had a really tough season. He was struggling with defensive pass interferences, and quarterbacks were kind of picking on him in the secondary. They decided to go to Kalen Carroll, and he's had 3 pretty good games at corner. And he's shown the ability to step in and at least play serviceable when they were playing bad before. So Kalen Carroll and Jordan Young, if they can build on what they're doing, that would be interesting to see. But the secondary has been really suspect all season. And if they have a down game, this could be an opportunity for West Virginia's passing offense to kind of set the tone this last week, go and get a win in week 12.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, like I said, even though our pass offense is worse than the league, it had been up until the Oklahoma game. It had been playing much better. Really starting with the Houston game, even though we lost that game, our offense performed well that game, especially in the passing side. But the strength of our passing game, because of Garrett Greene at the quarterback, his strength is the deep ball. Garrett has been very inconsistent on the short and intermediate stuff, but anything deep down the field, he's typically accurate on. Is Cincinnati? What would you say? Are they weaker at covering the deep ball? Are they giving up a lot of deep passes? Are they?
They're very much weaker in covering the deep ball.
Okay.
And some of those have been. They had good coverage, and the wide receiver made a play. I think it was Monterey Baldwin for Baylor. Had a really, really big game against them. And so they've been definitely weaker in the deep passes. But the thing is, they don't complete the deep passes, but there's a DPI, and then you're 35 yards down the field. So that's been the biggest struggle. And Satterfield has talked about, he's like, look, usually you're close to 50-50 on getting the calls and getting them called on you. And I think it's probably somewhere like 75-25 on them getting DPIs and not getting them when they're on offense.
Wow.
So that's been a really, really tough part. But even when Justin Harris had a tough game against Pitt with the DPIs, he also had 3 pass breakups, some of them on the most important plays of the game. So it's really been up and down on what they've been able to do. But I would look, like I said, Kalen Carroll, redshirt freshman, Jordan Young, a Florida transfer. I would expect them to be starting, and they have the opportunity to build off the momentum that they've had the past couple of weeks.
Okay, interesting. Well, I mean, Houston's pass offense has been pretty good. I mean, they've got really good receivers. Donovan Smith has been playing well at the quarterback spot, and they were able to hold them to 25 points, 24 points, somewhere in there.
I think so. I can't.
So that's. I mean, they must have had a good week.
I think he only passed for 102 yards.
Yeah. So they must have played well that game. So maybe that's, it's late in the season. A lot of these teams are starting maybe to finally click. A lot of teams play their best football this time of year, and maybe that's where Cincinnati is. I guess we'll see. Now let's flip sides of the ball real quick and look at that Cincinnati offense. Obviously, we'll talk about Emory Jones in a minute, but let's first talk about the guy who I think the offense revolves around, and that's Corey Kiner. Man, I was really impressed with him in the Pitt game that I watched. I watched pretty much that whole game. That young man is something special. I mean, he's like a bowling ball out there, man. Can you talk a little bit about Corey Kiner and what he brings to the table?
So Corey Kiner is an LSU transfer. He's a local kid from Roger Bacon High School, and kind of his decision came down to Cincinnati and LSU coming out of high school. Went to LSU, whole Coach O thing happened. He decides, I'm going to transfer, and he was basically going to Cincinnati. Everyone knew he would end up at Cincinnati when he announced he was transferring. Year one last year was kind of a struggle, trying to get used to the new playbook. And they had Charles McClelland, I think, led the team in rushing last season. But then this year, he's kind of the guy. And I didn't expect him to be the guy. I thought Miles Montgomery, I thought he fit Satterfield's zone run scheme too much, and the fact that he is much more explosive than Corey Kiner. But the thing about Corey is his balance at the line of scrimmage is crazy. So that's what's allowed him to kind of hit the holes perfectly and see the running lanes that he has. But as you probably saw in the pit game, he broke a big one, but then it was like, oh, okay, they're definitely going to catch him around the 20-yard line. So he's not as explosive as some of the better running backs on this team, but he's consistently shown the ability. I mean, he's probably going to be a 1,000-yard rusher. I think he only needs 115 yards in these past 2 games to get to that 1,000-yard mark. But he's had a great season. And I think while he doesn't have the explosiveness that Scott Satterfield wants out of the backfield in his zone run scheme, he's shown the ability to consistently provide those 5 to 6 yard gashes, and then he can burst for 40 or 50 pretty consistently in the past 4 to 5 weeks. But I don't know if it's a Corey Kiner thing as much as it is this offensive line and their ability to gel, kind of just throwing it together. Nick Cardwell, the offensive line coach, has done a great job. The one returning starter from last year's team on offense was center Gavin Gerhardt. And then you surround him with Luke Kandra, D'Artagnan Tinsley, DeAndre Buford, and who am I missing? I can't remember. John Williams, the left tackle. So they have really loved this scheme, and they've played great. I think Luke Kandra is the highest rated guard according to PFF. So that ability with Corey Kiner's veteran leadership and the running back room has helped. But the interesting thing is they've had 3 games this year where they've had 2 running backs break the 100-yard mark, which is, I think, maybe the first time in school history that they've done that. So Ryan Montgomery has stepped in and had some big games. Miles Montgomery has also stepped in and had some big games. I think he has the longest rush. So you'll see a stark difference in the kind of running backs that Kiner and the Montgomery players are. And Kiner's going to bruise you. Like he said, he's a bowling ball. He'll run you over, and he'll just be in the secondary in an instant. While Miles Montgomery is snap of a finger, blink of an eye, and he's gone down the sideline.
Right. Gotcha. West Virginia's got a similar deal with CJ Donaldson and Jaheim White back there, which CJ got hurt in the last game. We're not sure if he'll even play in this one, which could be a big factor for us, honestly. CJ's our workhorse back, and without him, Justin Johnson would probably fill the spot, and he's been very inconsistent. He's had some really good games, and then he's had games where he struggles. So it'll be interesting to see if they even go with Jaheim White as a starter. Him being a true freshman, they may not feel comfortable giving him that much of the load. I don't know yet, so we'll see. But we should find out hopefully tomorrow night when Neil Brown does his radio show whether Donaldson's going to play or not. But back to your all's defense. I mean, I'm sitting here looking. I mean offense. I'm sorry. Back to your offense. Cincinnati has the second best rushing offense in the conference right now at 223 yards a game, behind UCF. So, and then when you look at their passing offense, I'm sure we'll see a different story here. I would imagine. 11th in the conference, so still not as bad as West Virginia. There, 221 a game. But just what I'm getting at is when you look on paper at your overall defensive grades, your overall offensive grades, as far as your stats, and I know stats don't tell the whole story, but Cincinnati is not at the bottom of the league in most statistical categories here. So why have they been losing football games in your mind?
It's discipline and just silly mistakes. I think you go back to the BYU game, and I got a firsthand look at it because I flew all the way there to cover that game. You have a misread by Emory Jones, hands BYU 6 points. So he just doesn't see a linebacker, and linebacker picks it off, takes it. I think it was an option route. And then with that, you're in the situation where it's 28-20. Your defense finally gets a stop, and you have momentum. You just went down and scored. BYU's punting it back to you. Ball bounces in front of Braden Smith. He tries to reach up a ball that's 15 feet above his head and just tips it. BYU recovers. 2 plays later, they score. So that's gifting them 14 points right there. You go to Baylor. I don't know if you watched the highlights of the Baylor game. Braden Smith takes a kickoff, bobbles it, literally like water boy style, throws it to the Baylor defender, and he runs into the end zone.
Oh, man.
They lose that game by, I think it was 3 points maybe or 6 points. So that's the difference in the game right there.
Yeah.
UCF, I'm not done yet. This is how many silly mistakes they've had. UCF, you have your safety and maybe your best defensive back get thrown out of the game for contact with an official in the first half. Then he has to miss the first quarter of the Houston game. Even so, you get down, you're at midfield, you complete maybe your first deep pass in 5 games to Braden Smith on the 2-yard line, perfect throw and catch. You get up to the line of scrimmage, immediately false start.
Yeah.
So now you have to back up to the 7-yard line. You can't get anything going. The red zone offense has been putrid all season. You have to kick a field goal. You lose that game 28-26. So when you look at the situations, and Scott Satterfield has said, and this is usually coach speak, but I will vouch for him in saying that it's the God honest truth. They are a couple plays away, maybe one play away in each game from being, what would that be? 6-4. They really are.
Interesting.
So it's the ability to make plays. They've had a lot of dropped interceptions, and it's the ability to be disciplined that makes teams different. It makes you win those games. And a lot of defenses talk about the ball goes to energy. And I don't think the energy on this team has been great this season. So it's just kind of naturally ended up in them losing because of, I don't know if it's the lack of vocal leadership on the team, which the coaches have talked about, if it's the lack of camaraderie on the roster, but they have the talent to be 6-4 right now, which they should be 6-4. And I can even, I'll even talk about another one, the Miami, Ohio game, who they hadn't lost to in 18 years. They're at their own 25. Scott Satterfield just says, you know what? I'm going to make a statement right here. You know, these people don't really know me that well. I want to show what kind of coach I am. I'm going to run a fake punt on 4th down with the game tied.
Oh, my God.
So they get a first down on a fake punt. They continue going down the field. They're on about the 15. They have a 25-yard field goal. They mess up the coverage, comes around and gets blocked. Miami wins in overtime. So they could be 7-3 if you talk about that against an inferior opponent that they should have beaten.
Wow.
It's been one play here or there, and that's been the difference in the season.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking too. It looks like you talk about discipline. Penalties is part of that too, which penalties is only a small piece of it. But you guys are Cincinnati's 12th in the league. Which means that's not good. But I mean, Oklahoma's dead last, and they're pretty good. So penalties is not the end all be all. But it just goes with the other things. And West Virginia fans, look, when you're sitting there talking, the games that we've lost this year, with the exception of Oklahoma, who just flat out destroyed us.
Yeah.
It's been discipline issues. You know, we ran into the punter against Oklahoma, ran into our own punt returner at Oklahoma State. They recover it. False start penalties at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
Things like that. That plagued us all last season. And to be honest with you, it had plagued us really throughout the Neil Brown tenure, which is one of the reasons fans are so frustrated, because it's like this is such an undisciplined team. Well, this year we come in, we're one of the least penalized teams in the conference. So we know the penalties have improved. We're not committing as many turnovers as we had in the past, so that's better. But then all of a sudden we have these games pop up like Houston, Oklahoma State, where we just make these boneheaded mistakes, and those cost you football games. This league, the talent is – there's so much parity in this league from a talent standpoint. 1 or 2 plays make a difference in a game. And if you're the one who makes the undisciplined play, there's a good chance you're going to lose it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what you're talking about there, West Virginia fans are all too familiar with, unfortunately. But you're right. This year, for the most part, we've been on the right side of a lot of those. Whereas in the past which is why I guess we're 6-4 versus 4-6, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So where in the past we might have been 4-6.
Yeah.
So that's a great point you make about the mistakes. And then I look at Emory Jones. I know Cincinnati fans are probably extremely frustrated with Emory Jones right now. Transfer from Florida.
Arizona State.
Florida, I'm sorry. He was in Florida, then Arizona State. Yeah, sorry.
Bad year.
Yeah. But when you look at his stats, I mean, he has 15 touchdowns, but he also has 10 interceptions. So he will throw you the football if you're on the defensive side.
Yeah.
Talk about Emory Jones a minute and what he brings and why fans are so frustrated.
I think one of the more frustrating things about Emory is he's kind of been one read a lot of this season, and then he just relies on his legs, which he's a super athletic kid. He's super fast. He's a true dual threat quarterback. Never ran when he was at Arizona State, which is why I don't think he loved it there. Comes to Cincinnati, playing for a coach who always coaches with a running quarterback, and Scott Satterfield. And he's shown some abilities. I think another thing that goes back to what I was just saying is there's been 5 or 6 deep balls that have been wide open that he's missed by a yard or 2 yards. That could translate to 36 more points this season. So the fans have been really, really frustrated. And I think this new kind of scheme that Satterfield's doing, he's playing Emory Jones the first 2 series, and then he's bringing in backup Brady Lichtenberg the next 2 series, and then he decides who's the hot hand and goes with him. So the past 2 games, it's been Emory. And he's continued on against UCF and continued on against Houston. I think Lichtenberg might have came in for a series down the line in Houston, but it was mainly Emory's game. Gotcha. But the thing that has shown up increasingly in the past few weeks, which has kind of led to Emory playing better, has been the rushing offense's ability to burst for 50 to 60-yard plays, because you didn't have that at all through the first half of the season. And watching from the press box, it's like every single drive is gritting teeth. It's a battle just to get a first down. So it feels like they need basically all 4 plays to get a first down, which is why when you look at it, Cincinnati will probably be the team with the highest amount of fourth down conversions or fourth down attempts, let's say, because they haven't really converted a ton. So he's been playing with a lot of pressure. And the running game getting going has really helped both Lichtenberg and Emory Jones. So I would expect him to kind of play mistake-free football more against West Virginia, because that's kind of been the trend. He's finding open receivers more easily, and I think he's playing with the confidence behind his offensive line, because they've shown that they can be consistently good. Instead of him kind of thinking, okay, first read isn't there, and I'm going to look to my right, and if I look to my right and he's not immediately open, I'm just going to take off.
Okay. Garrett Greene used to have that same issue, which is why he didn't start, didn't get to play as much for the first couple years of his career.
Yeah.
And now he's done a better job of going through his progressions, where he didn't in the past. He'd see that first read, it wasn't there, he'd take off because he was so confident in his running ability. And a lot of times it worked. But when you're the starter, you can't do that, because they number one,
ball down the field. Yeah,
exactly. You got to get in the field, and plus you can't. They want him. Garrett's he takes a lot of hits, and he's not a big guy. He's only 202 pounds, 205 pounds, somewhere in there. So, and he's already missed 2 games with an injury. So they're trying to keep him on the field, because our entire offense obviously changes without him out there. So that's another piece of it, right? They only want you to only run when you absolutely have to, or when we, call a design run for you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you need to throw it down the field. So I totally understand where Cincinnati fans are coming from with Emory on that. You kind of talked about the offensive line. Talk about the receiving corps for just a minute. I look at the stats, and it shows that Xavier Henderson is your leading receiver as far as yardage goes, with 648 yards. Is he the number one guy, or is there somebody else on that receiving corps that we need to be concerned about?
I think he would be the safety blanket. He played with Emory Jones at Florida, so he comes in as this lanky dude who has probably the best straight line speed on the team, probably the most projectable NFL receiver. I don't know about necessarily this offseason if he declare, but I think coming back next year, I think it would put him in a good position to show teams that he can consistently contribute. Braden Smith is another guy. I think he's a 6-year guy out of Louisville. He's finally fully healthy. You'll see a lot of throws on the run from Emory Jones to Braden Smith right next to the sideline. That's their bread and butter play, to get 12 to 13 yards. And then he'll also stretch the field. Xavier Henderson will stretch the field as well. But that's really, like, in terms of receivers, those are the 2 guys that Jones is going to go to. You haven't seen a lot of D. Wiggins this season. Donovan Ollie came from Washington State, has seen very little of the field. Aaron Turner is kind of a Swiss Army knife guy. I call him a hybrid running back receiver, but he's kind of just a receiver. He'll take the end around. and he'll also be found in the middle of the field, but I wouldn't expect to see a ton of him. Now, the interesting guy would be Barry Jackson, who's a true freshman that they're kind of playing and saving his red shirt. He's shown the ability to make plays, and he's burst for some big plays in the little chances he's got.
He's averaging 30 yards a reception.
Yeah, and I think he only has 3 or 4 receptions. 3. Yeah, 3. So he's a really interesting guy, and I look forward to covering him as he gets better through his career. Who else?
Has he already played his 4 games?
I don't think so. He came in against EKU, UCF, and Houston, so I think this would be his last opportunity.
Okay.
So it'd be interesting to see if they save him for West Virginia or if they save him for Kansas. In terms of the tight ends, Peyton Singletary got hurt against Houston, had to get carted off the field, or I think he came off the field with assistance and then got carted from the sideline to the locker room. Shimon Mateer produced a lot early in the season, has kind of really fallen off lately. I don't know if he's fitting in the scheme in terms of what Cincinnati wants to do, but he turned into this guy who was making big plays down the field, and then they'd go to him in the red zone consistently, and now he's just kind of gone missing. So I'm not sure what's up there, but without Peyton Singletary, I would look for Shimon Mateer to get some more action this week.
Yeah, interesting. When you look at your receivers, the one guy that West Virginia, the Cincinnati fans may have heard of, but is our defensive back Beanie Bishop. He actually leads the country in passes defended, passes breakups. He's actually a semifinalist for the Bednarik Award.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he'll probably be matched up with Henderson some. Would be my guess. But does Henderson move around? Do they move him around from different sides, or how do they normally line him up?
I think so. And that's, if I'm being completely honest, that's not something that I look at near as much. I probably should.
I'm the same way. Don't worry about it.
The biggest worry with this team has just been them completing the ball. But it's usually just been Braden Smith and Xavier Henderson, which I think Braden Smith has great talent. I think has the best hands on the team, and he's made some huge catches in huge situations. Which
he made a great catch in that pit game.
Yeah, which I was just going to bring up. He contorted his body in a really weird way. I don't know how he caught that ball, but he hasn't shown the consistent ability to stretch the field, which, as I talked about before, it's kind of been some overthrows from Emory and just missing plays. But he's been that veteran leader. And the thing I wanted to bring up about this receiver core, coming out of last season, there was one scholarship player, one scholarship receiver in the receiving room coming back from last season.
Wow.
So you had Chris Scott coming back. Then you had Barry Jackson, a true freshman, coming in. They had to bring in, I think it was 6 or 7 receivers just to fill out the receiving core. So all these portal guys are still really learning the system. They're still learning Emory Jones. So I think them coming back next season, knowing the camaraderie of the team and being able to build with whoever the quarterback will be. I don't know if it's going to be Brady Lichtenberg. Wouldn't expect it to be Brady Drogosh. They could go to a portal guy. But just knowing the system, knowing Scott Satterfield, I think that would really help them.
Interesting. Again, another similarity. West Virginia lost. We lost a bunch of guys as well. We lost our top 2 receivers to graduation. And then we lost. Well, I'll say they did have a year of eligibility left. Or at least one of them did. Chose not to use it, but he would have been a 5th or 6th year guy.
Yeah.
But and that was Sam James, and then we lost our 3rd most productive receiver to the portal, and our 4th most productive receiver to the portal. So we had a similar issue, and we had to bring in several transfers. But ironically, with West Virginia, we've got a couple guys who were former walk-ons who have become 2 of our better receivers, Preston Fox and Hudson Clement.
That's awesome.
Both are West Virginia guys too, as far as they played high school football in West Virginia. It's a pretty cool story. Clement at one time was leading the country in yards per reception. May still be, I don't know. And Fox has just been a really reliable receiver for us. I mean, he catches just about anything thrown his way. Really great hands, can make some really tough catches in traffic and things like that. But we went out to the portal as well and got some guys. Now, a couple of those guys haven't panned out, but some have. We've got Devin Carter, the transfer from NC State, who has been really good for us. At least he's not been as consistent as we'd like him to be. But he's probably going to catch 35 balls for us this year, maybe 40. So he's going. He was definitely a worthwhile get out of the portal. And then Cole Taylor, our tight end, is a transfer from LSU, who's been a big get for us. So similar to Cincinnati, we've also had a lot of transfers come in to catch passes for us this year that we didn't have. So the transfer portal, people we like to complain when players leave the portal, but we've also got to remember sometimes it helps us.
Yeah, it's the new age.
Exactly. The portal. Fans have a saying that says, "The portal giveth, the portal taketh away."
Yeah.
Right. So it can go both ways. Real quick, one last thing. I was looking. It looks like Cincinnati has given up a lot of sacks this year. Is that something that's gotten better as the season progresses? Because you did talk about your offensive line doing pretty well in the run game.
Yeah.
Are they giving Emory Jones enough time to throw the football?
I think
or Brady Lichtenberg, whoever's in there.
It's definitely been something that's progressed. I think when you're in those games, the last 4 drives of most of those games when they're trailing, it's just been get back there and try to make something happen. So there hasn't been a lot of cohesiveness, and there hasn't been a lot of like, this play is going to work. We just need to run this play as executed. It's kind of been drop back, and I have to find someone, reckless abandon. Then he runs and realizes there's no one open, and it's kind of, he tries to take off, and then they come and get him from behind. So I think some of that can be accredited to Emory Jones' poor play earlier in the season. And then some of it was, they go in the pit game, and I think the offensive line, they played pretty good in the pit game, and then you expect them to kind of continue that on. They struggled against Miami. I think that was a game in which he was sacked. And then the next 2 games, I think they struggled to protect him a little bit too. But lately, I think they've been playing with some swagger. I think Luke Kandra getting his recognition, and then it's kind of everyone's saying, they have the 5th best rushing game in the country in terms of yards per game. So I think just playing with that confidence has really helped them. And again, Nick Cardwell has done a great job kind of throwing this ragtag group of transfers, first-year players, and one returning guy together to form a pretty good offensive line.
Interesting. I'll be honest with you, Keegan. I'm a content creator, but I'm a fan first. And I'm telling you, man, the more I talk to you, the more nervous I get, because Cincinnati, I think, is a better football team than that 3-7 record indicates.
Yeah.
And I'm really concerned that if our guys don't come in ready to play, that Cincinnati could beat West Virginia this weekend. And I'm concerned about that. I mean, a lot of the places you guys seem to be strong is where we're strong. So it's going to come down to who wins a lot of one-on-one battles in some cases. I do feel good about our defense, our defensive front, well, not really our defensive front, but our linebackers.
Yeah.
And our secondary, even though our secondary hasn't been playing great. If you guys really only have 2 go-to receivers, maybe that'll help offset some of our struggles a little bit, because, like I said, Beanie Bishop has been really good. It's really our safety position that struggled the most in pass coverage. But it sounds like Cincinnati doesn't have really that one receiver who's been stressing the safeties a whole lot this year.
They don't stretch the field very well. I think if you want to win this game, stopping Corey Kiner and that running game is of highest importance. So that's the thing, because if you stop the running game and you tell Emory Jones or Brady Lichtenberg, like, hey, you can't lean on this, like, you're going to have to complete passes down the field, that's when they're going to play a little bit tighter, and they might be forced into some mistakes. And then points off turnovers has been killer, and the turnover battle has been killer for the Cincinnati team.
Yeah,
Scott Satterfield says it. It's whoever makes the least mistakes is probably going to end up winning. And I think going back to the Houston game, Brady Lichtenberg comes in his first drive, maybe the quickest 3-and-out of the season. Just got nothing going. Second drive, Corey Kiner explodes for 62 yards. All of a sudden, they're right outside the red zone. He completes one more pass for 20 yards, and then Corey Kiner runs into the end zone. So if they can lean on the running game, I think it'll be tough, because this quarterback group has shown the ability to play mistake-free football and play better in the past few weeks. So I think stopping Corey Kiner, Miles Montgomery, Ryan Montgomery is the most important thing their defense has to do.
And our defense has been inconsistent there. They've had some good games where they've been able to stop the run.
Mm-hmm.
They've also had some games where they have not.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see which West Virginia defense shows up this week. If and they will probably try to put a lot of pressure on Emory Jones, assuming he's the quarterback. So we'll see how he handles that, and if our guys are able to get home. The problem with West Virginia is sometimes, even though they put pressure, they don't always get home.
Yeah.
And a quarterback like Emory Jones who can escape the rush is also concerning to me, because Dylan Gabriel, and I'm not comparing Emory Jones to Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel's a fan. No offense, but he's a lot better than Emory Jones. I think most people would agree with that.
Oh no, you're killing me. Oh no.
no, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not throwing shade at Emory Jones.
Yeah,
Dylan Gabriel's just that good.
Yeah.
But my point is, if he's able to escape the rush and make plays with his legs, or even escape the rush and make a play downfield. And I don't know how accurate he is at throwing on the run, but Dylan Gabriel picked us apart doing that last week. So it'll be interesting to see if we're able to get home on all those rushes, maybe force him into some mistakes.
Yeah, Emory's been pretty good throwing on the run this season. That's one of the bright spots for him, because
that's concerning.
He'll have some really, really bad throws, and then he'll just throw a perfect throw in a tight window on the run on the sideline to Braden Smith, and you'll be like, okay, who are we dealing with here? Are you good or not?
Yeah, that's concerning. The key is, though, we're probably going to give up. West Virginia's probably going to give up some of those plays. I'm sure we will. But the key for us is going to be how many turnovers can we get? Can we the times he makes the wrong throw or the bad throw, can we take advantage of it and get an interception and turn that into points? I think this game is going to come down to turnovers, and who forces the most turnovers and also scores off of those turnovers. And obviously, like you said, stopping the Cincinnati run game is going to be critical. And I think that goes both ways. I think Cincinnati stopping West Virginia's running attack too, because we're going to run the ball more than we throw it. At least that's the goal.
Yeah.
And if they have to turn us into a pass first team, typically not what we like to do. So it'll be interesting to see which team wins those battles. But one more time, Keegan, tell everybody where to find you and your work.
Yeah, again on X, or I still call it Twitter. It'll always be Twitter to me, at K Nickoson 42, as it is on the screen, KNICKOSON 42. And then at Bearcat Journal on Twitter, and then bearcatjournal.com with 247 Sports. Well, thanks for having me on. Like, growing up, watching you see the West Virginia battles were some of my favorite games to watch. So I am super excited to be at that stadium on Saturday and to see this matchup, and it'll just remind me of the Big East days. I'm super pumped.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting this back on the schedule. I was actually really mad that they didn't have us as a protected rivalry when the Big 12 schedule came out. I thought that was a huge blunder, because you heard both coaches. I know I heard Satterfield talk about it. Neil Brown talked about it. This has the makings of a really good rivalry in the future.
Yeah.
So hopefully, when once we get through this first 4-year stretch of the scheduling, hopefully it'll be a big enough game to where it'll end up getting protected on the next round of scheduling. So so we'll see. We do at least play each other three out of the next 4 years. So I'm looking forward to that. But and hopefully I'll be able to get to Cincinnati next year when we play you guys there.
Absolutely.
My goal is to try to make at least one Big 12 away game every year. This year I was able to get to Orlando to see UCF. Fortunately we won that game.
Yeah.
So hopefully next year I'll get to Cincinnati, because that's the only one within driving distance. So that'll be the easy one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have you been to Nippert Stadium before?
I have not.
It's an unreal atmosphere. It's one of the more unique college football stadiums. So, and I would expect that West Virginia game to be packed out. Just everyone, as I just said, the Big East nostalgia will be crazy. So definitely try to get to Nippert Stadium. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try.
Yeah.
We got Keegan once again. Thank you for joining the show, man. I know I've taken up an hour of your day. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Everybody, please go check out his work over at bearcatjournal.com and check out their YouTube channel as well, where they cover all things Cincinnati Bearcats. Hopefully, Keegan, I also have a basketball show I do with a partner of mine, and hopefully we'll be able to get you on our basketball channel too as we get into the basketball season, and we'll talk some Cincinnati, West Virginia basketball. How's that sound?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, guys, again, please subscribe to this channel here if you haven't yet. Hit the like button, share it with your friends and family. Drop a comment below. Let us know your score prediction for the game. Who do you think pulls it out? Do you think West Virginia can get that 7th win that has eluded Neil Brown? And can Cincinnati continue their winning ways? Let us know in the comment section. With all that being said, guys, we appreciate you tuning into this show. Have a top shelf day and Q Country Roads, baby.